Censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. Henry Louis Gates Jr., American literary critic, professor, historian, and filmmaker. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks, hit that like and subscribe button. And for the really serious folk out there, hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. All right, I want to get into some very quick announcements here. Just as a reminder, I'm going to be doing this all week. So the wife is going to Spain for vacation. She will be gone the 1st through the 10th. That means I'm on dad duty the whole time. And so this show will not be aired live at 7:30 next week. The show will be at noon, maybe a few minutes earlier. So just letting you know. Everything else should basically remain the same. So I just wanted to point that out. And one additional thing, the 6th, which is Wednesday, I may not even have a show. My son has a field trip, and I will be on that field trip with him. So I don't know if I can get, because I've got dad duty coming up. And, there's a whole lot going on. I mean, like when I get done with the show, it's busy, busy, busy all day long. So I don't know if I'll be able to squeeze in another episode and just kind of maybe drop one for you, but I will try. I will see what we can come up with. So I just wanted to give you that announcement. Again, I want to point out this Friday will be my 400th episode. And I have no idea what kind of cool thing I might do. But if you have any ideas, just let me know and we'll consider it. But time is ticking. Like it's already Tuesday. So we'll see. I don't know. I feel like something's up with my voice. It sounds a little weird. Okay. So there was a video circulating recently of a man being kicked off a flight over a shirt. Actually, it was over a hoodie, shirt. No, not much difference there, really. And so this kind of brings up the question about where does your First Amendment right begin and end? So let's play the video real quick and we'll get a sense of what's going on. Now, this is not the entirety of all the video. Like the man did a lot of video of his experience. I don't know if it was before the flight, but he did a lot, at least starting from the moment where the airline, the flight attendant had asked him to remove his shirt. So I'm only going to play a little clip. This is the one that was going around on social media. And then we're going to discuss this. So let's get in there. Where we at? Video. Bam.
Can you step on the jet bridge? I have to talk to you for a minute. Okay?
No, you don't.
You don't do that, I won't be able to let you fly on this plane.
Because
So I want to be, for anybody that's just listening in the background and for my audio listeners, I want to point out, as you're listening, it's got this little bubble text on the top and it says kicked off a flight for supporting Trump. You won't be able to see it. Obviously, it says in this video, I don't know if it actually shows a good picture of it, but the hoodie that he's wearing says F Joe Biden or F Biden, right? In really big letters. So that's what's going on here. So just play this clip.
because of my hoodie?
Huh?
Because of my hoodie.
Yeah, just flip it around. Alright?
I'm not doing that.
Alright, so then they're gonna have to remove.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You guys see that, right? I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything to nobody. That's their problem. You do not want to do this.
Sir,
Ma'am, you do not want to do this.
Take care of the complaint.
You're not here
It's not a big thing.
It is a big thing. I'm supposed to be living in a free country where I can wear what I want to wear, and you want to tell me to take something off because it doesn't agree to you? Can you give me a paper where it says to policy, and I will take it off? Let me see it right now.
We'll look it up.
You have the word F-U-C-K on your shirt. So
Okay.
And it's offensive to other
To who?
To other passengers.
Okay.
And if you don't come on the jet bridge, flip the shirt in, outside, in and out, right? So that word doesn't show. I will have to zipline the whole aircraft. No. And they did advise me also you will be on the no flying list.
All right. So serious business there, right? Like this man comes on the plane. He's got an F Joe Biden shirt. And it doesn't say the F, it has the whole word spelled on out. And some other passengers complained. And the airline said, look, you're going to have to flip your hoodie inside out. And he objects. And he's like, well, I got First Amendment right. Like, I'm in a free country, or at least I'm supposed to be. And they're like, yeah, be that as it may, you need to flip it out, flip it over, or you need to take it off entirely. Like it's upsetting some of the other passengers. You're like, oh, you don't want to do this, right? So we have this situation here, which very interesting because the first question that you can ask yourself is, number one, can airlines remove you over offensive shirts? Like, do they have that authority as it stands presently? And so why is this not working? There's always something that's not working here. Let's see here. Let me get, I know, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. So let me bring this up because I think this is super duper interesting. Because as it turns out, the answer is yes, they can. So let's go on over. Here's a travel site, Travel and Leisure. And the title, do airlines really have dress codes? What to know. Here's what you should know about airline rules for passenger attire and what happens if you break them. All right. So let me see here. I'm going to move a couple things around on the screen here so I can see everything that I want. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look and see what they have to say. We'll zoom in on it a little bit there. All right. Why is there always ads close? Goodness. All right. So do airlines have dress codes? Every major U.S. airline has clauses in their contract of carriage, the agreement you enter when you fly with an airline, surrounding attire. Usually they include provisions that state you must wear appropriate clothing and not be barefoot or emit a strong odor unless it is due to a medical condition. The dress code is typically left very vague, so it's mainly up to the discretion of the airline staff to enforce. This has resulted in several stories of passengers being denied boarding for clothing that others may seem suitable for flying. So if we go down here, they actually lay it out and they link to the contract of carriage for different airlines. So for instance, according to Southwest, this is quoting from their contract of carriage. Disruptive or unruly conduct includes, but is not limited to, the following: engaging in lewd, obscene, or patently offensive behavior, including wearing clothes that are lewd, obscene, or patently offensive. American Airlines. If an airline employee believes you've dressed inappropriately, you may be denied boarding, removed from the terminal, or face legal consequences, according to AA's condition of carriage. And they're quoted here saying, dress appropriately, bare feet, or offensive clothing aren't allowed. Delta Airlines, quoting them, Delta may refuse to transport or may remove passengers from its aircraft in situations when the passenger is barefoot and when the passenger's conduct, attire, hygiene, or odor creates an unreasonable risk of offense or annoyance to other passengers. It's down to it, even like if it's annoying me, right? If you have a weird smell and I find it really annoying, I can be like, bing, I can hit the little button and the flight attendant will come over and I'll be like, this person got a weird smell. You need to do something about it. And then maybe the people behind me might, and then Delta will be like, all right, well, they can decide. Is this something that we want to deal with? Do you have to deal, whatever. And I don't know that there's any criteria that they try to use it. Like the article says, it's left open. It's vague. So it's kind of at their discretion, right? Airlines, United Airlines, UA shall have the right to refuse transport or on a permanent or temporary basis, or shall have the right to remove from the aircraft at any point any passengers who are barefoot, not properly clothed, or whose clothing is lewd, obscene, or offensive. Spirit Airlines, a guest shall not be permitted to board the aircraft and may be required to leave an aircraft if that guest is barefoot. Like, that's weird. Like, I get the whole barefoot thing, but it's just weird that they have it written in there. Like, do people actually try to fly barefoot? Because that seems kind of like I've seen people go barefoot in places and I'm like, that's gross. And I'm not a particularly sensitive guy when it comes to gross things. Like I tell my son, I'm like, mommy is kind of prissy, but if daddy is grossed out by it, you probably should be too. Because daddy's got a he's, he's he's pretty open to things, I guess. Anyway, I would never walk on a like think of all the people that have been walking and where their shoes have been and just everything. It just on your feet. That's just gross. Anyway, that's weird. All right, whose clothing is lewd, obscene, or offensive in nature? JetBlue, persons whose conduct is or has been known to be disorderly, abusive, offensive, threatening, or intimidating, violent, or whose clothing is lewd, obscene, or patently offensive. All right, on and on and on. We got to, and so you can actually like it's in the carriage of contract that you can be removed. So this is not like this new thing. Right? Like it's literally in the contract. And we're going to talk a little bit more about contracts here in just a moment after the intermission. Let me get to some comments here really quickly. Let's see here. Joe Hanush says First Amendment applies to prohibit government in all caps here, he says, from infringing on exercise of free speech, not private business. I totally agree. And we will address the First Amendment issues and whether or not they should tomorrow. Today, we're at least laying the foundation for what exists at present. Let's see here. So that Liberty Lady says, why are these goofs still wearing that? Is that still a thing on airlines? So what I didn't mention is that when I looked up this video, it turns out this incident is like 2 years old. And so it's not a new one. It just started circulating again. Such is the way on social media. You have to be very careful out there, folks. Sometimes you'll see something and you're like, what? That happened? And then if you take the effort to go and dig into it, you find out that it's literally like 2 years old. A lot of stuff gets memes about, incidents, videos, those kinds of. What I try to do these days is I look at the quality of the video and I use that as kind of a gauge on whether or not it's a new video or an old video. And that won't last forever, but for right now, it's actually a pretty decent metric to help me quickly identify, is this something new or old? Because if the video is very grainy or pixelated, then there's a good chance that it's a very old video that's getting like a lot of the fight videos, a lot of the altercations that you see between people that float around on social media. When you look into those, a lot of those are, have circulated, for years, and it's just resurfacing and, it's having its, second or third or fourth 15 seconds of fame. And so just be mindful of that when you're out on social media. Try not to get too outraged about things because you might be getting angry over something that happened like 10 years ago. And why, like there's plenty to be angry about today. So let's not get angry about something that happened 10 years ago. Let's save some of that anger for today's stuff. Okay. So just keep that in mind. But that's the metric that I use. It's not always foolproof because sometimes people blow up a video to zoom in on something. The video was taken in like, 720 or 1080, but they zoom in to the point where it's actually pixelated anyway. And so they showed just that was kind of this video that we just saw. This video was actually captured in portrait on somebody on his cell phone. The original video actually looks much clearer, but somebody zoomed in to kind of capture just certain portions of it. But that happens. But I figured that the reason I decided to do this video anyway, even though it's 2 years old, is because it really brings up a good question that I see come across social media all the time. And that's, what is the nature of private business? Like, when is a business actually really a private business? Which again, we're going to get into tomorrow on part 2. But we wanted to lay the foundation today and say, right now, is there even like some sort of contract, or is there something, that we can look at that says that, yes, they can. And in fact, there is. So we're going to go to intermission. And when we come back, we will talk about some contracts and we will look a little bit more into this. All right, here we go.
Attention, Florida. We believe in maximum freedom and limited government.
There will be multiple libertarians on your ballot this November. So take a chance on something different. I'm Fina Benoan, and I approve this message.
Okay. All right. So, contracts. Now, I established that there is, in fact, a contract. It's called a contract of carriage. And it does stipulate that airlines can remove you if you have offensive clothing on, or if you're behaving in an offensive manner. So if you walk on there and you're dropping F bombs to your buddy and you're like, yeah, and then I did this to this girl, and then I did that, and this mother, and you're saying all this crazy stuff, well, you might offend some of the other passengers and they could complain. And then the airline has to make a decision and say, okay, do we want to keep this person on or do we not? Probably what they would do is try to resolve it the simplest way possible by saying, hey, sir or ma'am, can you please not use that kind of language? We have other passengers on board. There's children, yada, yada, yada. Or, hey, can you turn your shirt inside out or switch it with a different shirt or what have you, right? So that other passengers don't have to look at it. And so that is already established. But there's more to the contract. So first and foremost, for libertarians, contracts are a big deal, right? This is the nature of of believing in the individual first, and then going from there and saying, hey, as long as you have consenting adults, pretty much everything is a go. But some things do maybe require a contract. If I want to buy something from my neighbor, if I want to just, come over and say, hey, can I get a cup of milk? And they'll say, I sell you a cup of milk, which would be weird, but work with me. Assume they might want to sell me a cup of milk. And I might say, okay, I'll give you a dollar. Probably don't really need a contract for that. But if it was something bigger, like, hey, I would like to buy this house from you, buy this car from you or something, then I might start getting into contracts so that we list out, okay, here's what I'm offering. Here are the details of this particular transaction. If you've got 30 days to come to bring it back, those kind of things, right? So you start including other elements when it gets when the transaction becomes more complex. Now, I think there are basically three types of contracts that we regularly encounter. You have your informal contract, you have your formal contract, and you have your semi-formal contracts. What do I mean by that? Now, these are just me making up terms for the purposes of splitting them apart. There may actually be real legitimate terms that are used. So an informal one is more like, think about when you go to a restaurant. You go in and you say, I'd like a seat for 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. The hostess seats you. You sit down. The waitress or the server brings you the menu. You take a look at the menu and you say, I would like to have a hamburger, such and such, whatever. And so then they go out and they put an order in for the hamburger. They bring the hamburger out. You eat the hamburger and then they bring you a bill. Okay. That's all basically informal. The notion is that you have agreed to pay for it. Now, there was no contract. Nobody showed you something in writing. You didn't sign anything. It was just understood, right? You understood how this works. Therefore, you can get in trouble if you decide to just up and leave and be like, well, I didn't sign a contract. But in some sense, you did. You assumed your part in this contract by sitting down. In the same way that the restaurant has assumed that they're going to, if you've asked for your burger to be cooked at, say, medium, then, or your steak at medium rare, then they have agreed to cook your steak or your burger or whatever in the way that you've asked. And it can go in any number of directions. Like, hey, I have this sensitivity to this food or whatever, so please, don't add this to it, remove this, whatever. They've inherently made these agreements. And this is all understood. And virtually everybody in society understands this. Okay. Then you have your formal one. Now, this is more like you go buy a house. So what do? You get a loan. In order to get the loan, it's like a huge contract between you and the bank. And so you have to have all these clauses and things that you got to read and all these stipulations, so on and so forth. And if you're a good person, you will read it and then you will sign it and you will understand what you have signed. Most people don't read it. Okay. But this is now where and I say this is formal because you now have signed your name, right? You didn't just agree by the mere act of sitting down like you were in a restaurant. You actually signed your name. You went an extra step and they said, all right, here's the contract. Here are all the details that we're offering and that we agree to, all the terms. And then you say, okay, you read it and then you agree and then you sign, or you don't read it, but you still sign. Then you have your more semi-formal contracts. So this is something, think about like when you subscribe to something online or when you purchase something. This is more like when the purchase in itself is the agreement. It's basically your signature. So it's not really you signing, but you've paid for it. So you might think of this in terms of like online subscriptions. And then of course, airlines, right? You go and you purchase a ticket and you didn't sign a contract that says where they handed you a contract like you would at the bank, and then you signed it, but your purchase is effectively the signature. All right. So passengers agree to these terms. This man is upset and he's like, oh, I have this First Amendment right. But you agreed by your purchase of the ticket to the terms of the carriage. What they call that? It's such a weird term, but their carriage contract. You agreed to that. But there's more, because actually the airline has agreed to it as well. So I want to show you another video that you probably have seen videos like this, and you probably didn't realize that they can be used in a conversation like this. So let me show you this video. It comes from somebody named Erica Kohlberg. She makes tons of videos. She's a lawyer, and she basically reads the fine print and then goes and makes videos about the fine print so that people know what the obligation of the company that they're interacting with has with them, because these obligations are two ways. And I think this is a core component of understanding this argument. So let's take a look at Erica's video here.
Hi, it looks like you bumped me from this flight I was supposed to be on. Yeah, we overbooked it. Basically, we sold more tickets than seats on the plane, and to our surprise, everyone showed up. But what can be done? We'll try to get you on the next flight in a few hours, but there's nothing else I can do. Sorry. She has no idea I follow Erica. Watch this. Actually, I've read the terms. This is called involuntary denied boarding, and in this case, I'm eligible for compensation. Okay. How much money do you want? Well, it depends. When's the next flight you can get me on? It leaves in 2.5 hours. According to the Department of Transportation, since the next flight you can get me on results in over a 2-hour delay, I'm entitled to 4 times the cost of the one-way fare. I paid $375 for the one-way fare, so that's $1,500. Oh, fine. We'll get you your $1,500 and I'll book you on the next flight. Do I need to pay for the next flight you're booking me on? Nope, we're covering that in addition to the $1,500. And who taught you this? Erica taught me. She's a lawyer and reads the fine print, so I don't have to. That's why I follow her.
All right. So just a snippet. Now, I know somebody might quibble and say, okay, DL, part of that expectation was based on the Department of Transportation rules. I get that. But if you understand that contracts frequently have in their contract what they will agree to do and what you will agree to do. And so just kind of work with me and let's not nitpick. The point here is that this man, while he's objecting and saying, hey, I've got this First Amendment right, he signed a contract, right? And when I say signed, he signed it, via his payment. He didn't sign it with his name, but his payment was his signature for this. So it was what I would call a semi-formal contract. And by that purchase, he has agreed to the terms, whether he read them or not. He should have read them so that he understood. And then in reverse, the company, the airline, in that case, it was Delta, they have obligations as well. And the reason that I bring up this video from Erica is that it stands to reason that if you expect an airline to honor their part of the carriage agreement, then they can expect you to honor yours as well, right? This is a two-way street. And I think this is very important because this same man, if his luggage was lost, he would expect some sort of compensation or something, right? And he might even look in the contract to see, okay, they lost my luggage. What is it that they owe me? What do they have to do based on the contract? And what would his argument be? Let's assume, and I don't have the information at the moment, but let's assume that they lose his luggage. He looks into the contract, and the contract says, if we lose your luggage under these conditions, whatever conditions they might be, then we will pay you, $1,000. Let's just say that, right? So he might look in there and he might say, hey, you owe me $1,000. And they might say, well, why do we owe you? Well, you lost my luggage and here's the criteria. And all of these criteria have been met in this particular incident. So I want my $1,000. And if he got really upset, he would go to court and he would say, Your Honor, I paid for this ticket. They have it in their contract that they are supposed to pay me if they lose my luggage, right? And again, we're making up a hypothetical on the luggage and payment and all that stuff. The point being, if it were reversed, if they were violating their end of the contract, this man and many others actually have been, would be upset and demanding that the airline meet their obligation. Happens all the time. How many people have been like, hey, you owe me because, you are supposed to, I'm not paying for my meal because you didn't, I'm getting tongue tied here. Got it. Okay. I got an idea. I go out to a restaurant. I order a drink. I order a glass of wine with my meal and a water. And then they bring me the water. They bring me my meal. And I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and they don't bring me my wine. And then finally I say, you know what, whatever. So then they come with the bill and they're like, and I look on the bill and there's a glass of wine on the bill. And I say, no, I'm not paying for that because I never received it, right? Like this is part of that contract. I'm paying for stuff that I've received. If I don't receive it, then I don't pay for it. Or if I get my meal and the meal is all messed up, right? And let's say that I've waited like 30 minutes for my meal. And then the meal shows up. And then it turns out that the meal is all wrong, right? For whatever wrong means. So I flag the waitress over and I say, look, I've waited for 30 minutes. You finally bring out my order. It's incorrect. I'm not paying for this. Now, there's a little bit of negotiation on whether or not they will give you the meal for free, or maybe just cut you some slack on it and say, all right, we'll give it to you for 50%, or maybe not at all. Maybe they say, yeah, sorry, too bad. And they risk losing a customer and having their name blasted all over the place. But that's up to their discretion. But there is this understanding that if I don't eat my meal and I object to how it turns out, that I don't have to pay for it. And so therefore, if I say, I waited 30 minutes, you brought me the wrong meal, I'm done. Maybe I say I'll pay for my water. So 0, right? But I'm not paying for this meal and I'm not eating it either. I'm done. I'm leaving. And I get up and walk out. The likelihood that they will be able to have me arrested and bring me into court and force me to pay for that is crazy low, because they violated their end of the agreement. And so this man has violated his end of the agreement. And he's kind of like, he's like, well, this is the First Amendment. But again, he agreed when getting on a private company that, hey, I'm subjecting myself to their discretion about what is acceptable speech during, while I'm on this flight. That's what he agreed to. And he is totally in the wrong as far as I'm concerned. Now, this is the real question. Should they be able to limit what you wear? So let's take a look at some really quickly here. Here's some images. And this comes from a Twitter conversation that I had with somebody on this very video, actually, because I had posted this video. So here it is. And I said, my comments on the video were, it's an issue of contract, not freedom. This jabroni should read instead of filming. For example, Southwest says passengers may be removed for, quote, engaging in lewd, obscene, or patently offensive behavior, including wearing clothes that are lewd, obscene, or patently offensive. Okay, so I'm quoting their carriage contract, for example. So then somebody comes out and they said, well, did the airline take any federal grants or other funds? And so then I responded and I said, well, doesn't matter. People fly and agree to the terms, contract. So then the next response was, well, it may matter if the feds gave them money. 1A protections might, quote, attach in some cases. No. And then my final comment was to say, I would only concur if funding was in any way related to speech or had provisions regarding speech. Otherwise, it's a problem of taking money from one to give to another. The full ramifications of 1A being applicable would be awful. Consider requirements to practice religion, volume, etc. So I think that there's more implications there than people are taking into consideration. However, I'm going to save all of my comments regarding whether or not they should be able to for part 2 of this, for part 2 that I will do tomorrow morning. Today, I've shown there is a semi-formal contract with a reciprocating expectation that both airline and passenger expect the other to honor. And again, I'll address the matter of First Amendment and federal funding on tomorrow's show, so make sure you stay tuned. For now, let me see. Are there any other comments that I need to get out to? Looks like most of the comments are just conversations among each other, and that's fine. So I think we're good with the comments. With that, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com or rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. For now, I'm out.